So now we are gonna start with Oriana Haddad presentation. This is gonna happen in here, obviously, and then we are gonna move outside, where Oriana is gonna give a workshop. So you will have an idea of her work now, and then you can join the workshop. There is a limited capacity for the workshop, but at the same time, it's gonna happen another workshop in the room just at the back, so there will be happening 2 workshops at the same time. Ben Skinner is going to give the other workshop, and there is also limited capacity of 10 people. And Oriana's, I think it's like about 30 people you're going to work in pairs. And after that there will be another 2 workshops, again in the same spaces at the same time. So thank you, Oriana, for being here, and I give you the ground.
Thank you. So, I'm Oriana. I'm an anthropologist, dancer, performer, and movement analyst. I develop transdisciplinary projects about the human body. I combine cultural anthropology, anthropology of the body, together with contemporary dance, performance art, visual art, and somatic and movement studies. The aim of my research is to raise awareness on the original power of the body, on our innate ability to generate reality and therefore to change this reality. I address the body as a process of embodiment, so as a process of creation and becoming together with the environment. So I will proceed with introducing this philosophy of embodiment in terms of phenomenology and anthropological backgrounds, and then I will present my latest project, which is a performative and photographic project on the relation between the body and the city. And it's about the poetics of embodying the city and regenerating it. Okay, so miles and miles of skin, the poetics of embodiment. So what is the body? What do we need to know in order to access our body as a source of creation and change? I usually like to start with a quote by the philosopher Merleau-Ponty. This sentence stayed with me since I was in uni, as I thought that it was speaking a deep truth about our existence. So the body is in the world as the heart is in the body. In contrast to Cartesian and positivist philosophy, which stated the duality between the mind as an abstract subject and the body as a given object, phenomenology understands the body as both subject and object. Human existence is deeply rooted in physical presence. So the individual is both having and being a body. Reality is nothing but a phenomenon, an experience that manifests to the individual, who is both observing and participating to the creation of this reality. So the body is no longer a biological mechanism, but it's an experiential process. So it's a potential being with countless possibilities of becoming, depending on the experience that we do. So indeterminacy is our original state of being. We are boundless, we are limitless, we are shapeless. And then the transition from this state of indeterminacy to creation, to a shape of being that we take together with the world around us, is the process that is called embodiment. So we can go step by step through some illustration that I made in order to visualize this process. I took insights from different disciplines, from neuroscience, anthropology, philosophy, and somatic studies. Okay, here you have an example. You have a person in a public square. We always exist located and oriented somewhere in the world. And this is, at the physical level, the reality that is manifest to us. But how do we create this reality? The body is no longer, as I said, an object, but it's an open field. It's a field of receptivity and responsiveness to the stimuli of the environment. It reverberates throughout the environment as far as we can detect some stimuli. And what is the outer reality, in fact, is a field of multisensory stimuli, of countless, actually, multisensory stimuli. So you can see all these kinds. They can be auditory stimuli, visual stimuli, haptic or tactile stimuli, smell stimuli. Okay, so the blue is our body field, reverberating throughout, and the green is the environmental field. They start to merge together. So all these signs are the stimuli that that person is able in that moment or is choosing to detect. And here it's a creational process. So what happens? There is a stimuli-response relation, which is the process of embodiment. This girl, for instance, sees a tree, which is a visual stimuli. So she receives this information, she processes this information throughout the nervous system, and she transmits a response back to that stimuli, which becomes a tree. And that response contains all our sensorial, feeling, and cognitive response to that stimulus. So the person and the tree enters reality at the same time. So they are bound together. And the same for the car. There is an auditory stimulus. It's the noise of a car engine, maybe behind us. So we connect with that stimulus. We recognize it from previous experiences. We process that response that the car behind us is existing. And at the same time, we're having an experience of our hearing. So reality emerges as a stimulus-response relations. And we start to bind ourselves with the environment through all these stimuli that we detect. So this is a graphic that represents the process of embodiment. It's a kind of circuitry where the world and the self are born together through the detection of stimuli, the reception of this information, the process at the nervous level. I won't go there because it's quite complex to explain. And then the release of responses that are our senses, our sensations, our feelings, our meanings that we give to the world, back to the stimulus. So an image of the body can be this. It's no longer the bounded shape of our anatomy, but it starts to be a weave of circuitry that we make around us. And this is an advanced image, like we see the reality at the physical world underneath. So what we actually think that we are experiencing, and it's the result of all the circuitry that we have made, plus all the connection between the singular stimuli that we have made through our pathways, through our orientations, through our memories. So we create a whole weave that is energetic, that is made by sense, because at the end all this process is the sense-making process. So the body becomes all this network. And in order to really harness the original power that we have in our body, we have to let go of identifying ourselves with the bounded shape of our anatomy and starting to see our body as a field emerging and transforming the environment as we like. So the simplest form of power is the individual's own body, as the anthropologist and dance researcher said. So through this consciousness and through envisioning the body, as you saw in the images, we can start to take agency. And since each of us has a body, so each of us has the ability to change the reality around us. But what happened? Like wherever we are born and we grew up, we are already in an environment that is culturally shaped, so socially shaped. So all these patterns have been already intertwined by others. So the process of embodiment is essentially a political process. And as the Nobel Prize poet Dimitrakopoulou said and reminded us, whether you like it or not, your genes have a political past, your skin a political cast, your eyes a political slant. So here, dance comes at the core of our issues, because we realize that the process through which we can change reality is our embodiment. Embodiment is not just our lived experiences, but it's a dynamic process. So through the movement pathways that we perform in our domestic spaces or public spaces, we are generating information. So dance, with all the knowledge that carries about body consciousness and about spatial pathways, come at the center of our issues, in the sense that it needs to shift out from the art niche, and it can be a observing doing methodology for social change. So as Hannah said again, innovative movement patterns correspond to innovations of cultural order. So what I wanted to do is to apply dance in a political context and work together with biological sciences and cultural sciences in order to claim for these disciplines, for all the potential of these disciplines. And this is the latest project I've been working on. So it's been a practical application of this embodiment practice. And I really wanted to have an existential experience and sort of a test. Like, okay, if I have all this power, what can I do in my everyday life? So I am a body, and I'm living in a certain city, which is the city of London. And I wanted to see how far I could go, what kind of city I could regenerate again. So basically, the experiment has been selecting different locations around the city of London that has an anthropological value and significance for the practices that Londoners perform there. So they could be like enjoyable places and horrible places. And then I carried out a survey, an anthropological survey, and the movement analysis survey of the people using that public space. So I stayed there for days and months and observing what kind of sense of space these people had, what kind of practices they were performing, what was their sense of themselves while crossing that space. And then I carried out on-site performances, so I placed my own body there, and I started to learn again about that place. So through new movement pathways and through new intents, I started to generate new information through senses, through the somatic work, through movement. So the quote that really inspired me was from the sociologist Harvey: "The freedom to make and remake our cities and ourselves is, I want to argue, one of the most precious, yet most neglected, of our human rights." And when you start to observe the city, you really realize that we perform standardized practices. That is a political order of being. So there is a censorship that is applied to our potential embodiment. And it takes a lot of effort to go out of this energetic field that has been already rigidly shaped. So I started with the first embodiment. I wanted to embody anew the bridge. It's a Jubilee Bridge, it's a pedestrian bridge. That it's an iconic place in London because it connects the two strands of the River Thames. And it was very interesting as a public space because it's a pedestrian bridge, so people are supposed to enjoy, to have an enjoyable experience of crossing the river. What I've noticed is that actually, because of the very light architectural structure of the bridge, and because of the exposure to the wind and the water, people are feeling quite uncomfortable actually, and their movement is goal-oriented. They want to cross and reach the other strand and feel safe. Of course, they look around, they enjoy the panorama, but this is quite, you can have a sensation of their instability. There are some tourists, of course, that are the only one who stops to take picture, but then there is a flow that is quite fast. So my experience was to embody the bridge and to actually carry out a practice of staying and stillness. So I started to embody the architecture, as you can see. Then I started to have a eyes closed practice, which was I found the way to have a very vulnerable experience and really feeling the sense of suspension and emptiness. Also because the architectural structure has been made in a way that you can feel the bound on the water. Then I started to have a complementary practice, like I was either mimicking the postures of others or doing the exact contrary. So I noticed that most of the pedestrians had a kind of closed postures, protective postures. So I wanted to experience the opposite. What does it feel to open your chest, to expose yourself to the natural elements like water, like wind? Yeah, this is quite a mirroring experience. This is, yes, the process when I wanted to cross the bridge, eyes closed. This is when I wanted to embody the architecture of the bridge itself and started to feel what does it feel to look at this structure, because actually while we are looking we are developing somatic sensations. So I really had a kind of rebirth of the sense of the bridge by embodying it. So the sense of stability and security and exposure has become an experience of freedom, of confidence, and of flow, of inner flow. I embodied basically the sound and the smell of the water underneath. This was also, yes, letting my body becoming the bridge itself, in a kind of letting go way, abandoning way, letting the weight, down to the ground. This is underneath the bridge, which was also part of the bridge experience. And it's a totally different experience from above because there is a rush of traffic. So the body was feeling really exposed, but this time to another kind of flow, which wasn't the water flow, but was the traffic flow. So to actually emphasize this exposure made me understand a lot what kind of information we unconsciously embody when we are there. And this is the embodiment of the bridge, of the foundation of the bridge, of connecting two polarities, two strands, two opposites quality, yin and yang in life. It was an experience for me, personal, to connect all the polarities that we see in life as the bridge and that the physical world represents. Second embodiment was in a cemetery, as I found that it's a very significant place for our life. And it's very important because it's the management of death. So it's an old cemetery in West London. I started to see how statues above graves are representing a sense of grief and pain. So this was the representation of a statue that I found inside So where it's a place where we are supposed to grieve and to remember our beloved ones that are no longer there. So I started to embody both corpse, bodies that are underneath. And this is a really strong experience because it's the border between life and death, between a body that is no longer a person. So the sense of aliveness pops up enormously, like you really feel, because you are conscious of what is underneath and you are mimicking what is underneath. You are conscious that your body is not an object at all, as we were taught for centuries, but it's really like an experiential process. It's a living being force.